December 15th, 2021. Howie really was the strategist behind the Big Cat Public Safety Act. And if you listen to some of these letters, you'll understand why. It's such a shame that he didn't get the credit for it. Everybody gave me the credit for it, which was just stupid because I was the name that they knew from Tiger King. And that's really unfortunate because Howie really is the hero of this story. Howie's strategy letter to Wayne Pacelle. Wayne, it occurred to me this morning that I left off the list I sent last night the strategy of trying to grease the path for Hotline by first going to Paul, Rand Paul, with whom you already have a relationship, and ask for his commitment not to block a hotline, then using that to reach an agreement with Cruz and Lee. Asking not to oppose a hotline, I would think, is an easier ask than asking him to co-sponsor. If he agreed, the next ask would be if he could help with Cruz and Lee. The discussion Monday, drilling down into what it takes to get a bill through the Senate, was very helpful to me. And Wayne had been just an amazing source of information and history, and he's had so much success for the animals, and so I don't want to downplay his role in this either. Howie goes on to say, I had not the full understanding, but it was also discouraging. I know, quote, it is hard to get a federal bill passed, unquote. What I did not realize was that there was no regular order path, i.e. going through the committee and to the floor as a standalone bill. I think in terms of a decision tree, assigning percentages, what I am hearing from our conversation is there are 3 legs to the path, all with low percentages. 1, be in this EPW, Environment and Public Works package, if it gets formed. After all of our efforts, we seem to be down to Boozman, who keeps making positive noises and does not act. So what percentage can I assign to getting him? 25%? And Cramer, who Jeff knows, but we have not even talked to, 10% at best. Ernst, who we thought was our best chance, is cowardly, saying she won't be first, wants Boozman first, so 0% as a first. Not a pretty picture. 2, hotline when no bills get hotlined due to Lee, Cruz, and Paul. Hence the strategy above of trying to grease the path, starting with Paul. But what percentage can I assign to success? 10% realistically? Cruz already just walked away from Jason saying states' rights when Jason mentioned it.
Carole Baskin.
Hey, sweetheart. 3, find another moving bill to attach to. As I understand it, the bill has to be related, so a bill involving first responders or public safety, since they are not likely to be any other animal bills. We cannot name any bills that are prospects. One could arise, but realistically, we are more than halfway through the session, since during the last 6 months little happens in an election year. If we cannot see a bill now, what are the odds one arises in the next few months so that it has a chance to proceed? Under 10%. When I say discouraging, that does not mean I'm sitting here depressed, ready to throw in the towel. The clearer understanding did take some of the wind out of my sails. But the main impact is that in my mind it creates an extreme urgency to prioritize our efforts intensely on the 2 narrow gaps we at least have some chance with. There are Boozman and Cramer, and the initial approach to Sullivan you mentioned, and greasing the hotline path by having you first go to Paul where you have a relationship with your best federal issue arguments, and hoping to use his acquiescence to convince the other 2. Bottom line, Wayne and Marty, I think the most important thing you can do right now is convince Paul not to block a hotline and ask for his help with Lee and Cruz. And Jeff, I think the most important thing you can do is get Cramer in whatever fashion you think is most likely to succeed. And this is Jeff Denham that he's talking about. If that is in person, I'm happy to fund expenses to go to his district, meet with him in person, or whatever you think gives the best shot at him. John Blount, I think the most important thing you can do are the North Dakota sheriffs, realizing it is an uphill task, and use the duck hunt with Boozman to somehow close him despite his repeated practice of being evasive. Jason, I think, should focus on Graham and getting Burr to help, just not with Jason, I think, should focus on Graham and getting Burr to help, not just with Tillis, but with anyone in the EPW. Jeff's colleagues, George and Jordan, could focus on the House follow-up, which should be secondary to the Senate task for everyone else, except for the few that I think could influence a key senator. For instance, Cole, who you might think influenced Inhofe. Last, I wonder if Carole's visit in January should focus on the priorities above, i.e., try to see Lee, Cruz, Paul, Cramer, Boozman, Cole, with their main pitch being the first responders and federal issue arguments. And arm Shelby with the same federal arguments along with first responders and try to get her in to see Cruz as well as Cornyn. Anyway, that is my thinking after our conversation. I think our best chance for getting the bill passed, given the low odds in the Senate, is to intensely focus on raising the percentage of likelihood of success with the few EPW members where we have at least some chance, and greasing the hotline path. As difficult as the latter is, given that the package may not occur, and given our limited prospects for an EPW member, even though hotline is a long shot, it may be our more likely path if we can grease it in advance, rather than send it through and have to change a no to an abstain, which I think is much harder, particularly with the kind of egos we are dealing with. Attached are materials worked on in the past on federal issue and may be helpful with the usual hotline opponents and others who use states' rights as their reason for not supporting the bill. Feel free to edit or make something completely different if you think it would help. They are all points you know, but perhaps having them organized in a document, even just as a reference for yourself before meetings, might be useful. Thanks for reading this long email and considering my views. Howard Baskin. So this next section is about us terminating the Netflix/Good lawsuit, and I actually found the video file, so I'm going to play it for you here.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. It's Carole Baskin and Howard Baskin.
We've got some news today. During the years 2014 to 2019, when the producers of Tiger King repeatedly came and filmed and falsely told us they were making the blackfish of big cats to expose those who were mistreating the cats by using them for cub petting and keeping them in horrible conditions in roadside zoos, we signed releases giving them the right to use the footage that they took of us in one documentary motion picture. We were very public afterwards in expressing our disappointment in the false narrative that they produced, which had nothing to do with the mistreatment of animals, and falsely painted Joe Exotic as a sympathetic victim and Carole as the villain. When Chaiklin reached out to us a few months ago to, quote, clear the air, as she put it, we made clear we were not interested at all. We assumed that they would not be including footage they had taken of us for the original production in this new season 2 because they didn't have permission under these releases. In hindsight, I guess it was a mistake to assume that they would act with integrity. When the trailer for season 2 was made public, it became clear that they did intend to use the film of us despite not being legally entitled to. With very limited time to act, we filed suit hoping to obtain an injunction that would prevent them from showing season 2 unless they removed our footage. And just to be clear, the suit was not to stop them from showing season 2. The suit only sought to require them to remove our footage before showing it. We believe they could easily have removed the footage, which we feel would have been the ethical thing to do. This lawsuit was never about money damages. With the injunction declined, season 2 was aired, it received generally poor reviews, and dropped out of the Netflix top 10 rapidly. Look, we feel we were denied the only meaningful remedy available to us, and that pursuing money damages is just not the best use of our time because it's time consuming and it reduces the time we can spend on our mission of trying to stop the abuse. Where our time should be spent is getting the Big Cat Public Safety Act through Congress to stop the cub petting and stop the private ownership of big cats in backyards. And rather than suing people who produce salacious lies, our time should be spent working on meaningful productions like the award-winning documentary that we participated in, the Conservation Game, which exposes the celebrity conservationists who bring cubs on TV talk shows and on our new 2-episode series, Carole Baskin's Cage Fight, which is streaming now on Discovery Plus, which authentically shows our work going after these dangerous big cat exploiters. Both of these productions have, in contrast to Tiger King Season 2, received very strong positive reviews. For that reason, today we dismissed our lawsuit against Netflix and Good Productions.
FWC adopts a new rule banning bad actors. FWC approves captive wildlife rule language for post-revocation non-renewal actions. At its December meeting, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FWC, approved a rule language concerning captive wildlife licensing. The new rule improves public safety and increases accountability. Staff received feedback from stakeholders on the proposed rule language and incorporated changes to address concerns raised during public meetings and online comments. Rule changes related to captive wildlife violations will limit people who have had licenses revoked or non-renewed for violations from continuing to benefit from or be involved with captive wildlife. The final rule language includes a licensed individual who has had their captive wildlife permit or authorization revoked or not renewed may not continue to benefit from the facility or animals previously authorized under the permit, and an individual authorized under a corporate license that has been revoked but not renewed or not reviewed may no longer be involved with the care, feeding, handling, or husbandry of any captive wildlife under the corporate license. Prohibits the sale or transfer of the facility or animals previously authorized under the permit to a person or a facility of which the permittee is an officer, director, principal, employee, or agent, or in which such person holds an interest. Includes time periods for lawful disposition of animals in their possession, record-keeping requirements, and restrictions concerning to whom the animals may be transferred. View the Commission meeting agenda and documents at myfwc.com/commission by clicking on Commission Meetings and the agenda under December 15-16 of 2021. If you're enjoying my diary, please like, share, and subscribe. You can find other ways to connect to me over at bigcatrescue.org/Carole.Baskin.